like to call the FinCom meeting to order
With a roll call?
with a roll call vote.
King here?
Garth, you're here.
Austin here.
Last one here.
Shepherd here.
Andy here.
I'd like to call the CBC.
here.
I'd like to call the CBC to order with a roll call. Pape here.
King here.
Garth, you're here.
Austin here.
Last one here.
Shepherd here.
Ayala here.
Okay, so first order of business is to approve the prior 312 minutes. Everybody have a chance to review them?
Yes.
Yes.
Anybody want to make a motion? Apparently not.
I'll motion to approve the minutes of 3:12 as written.
Is there a second? I second it. Any discussion? Call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Moving on to review the FinCom wording for the expected firefighter warrant. That would be Article 5. And I believe that was sent out a while ago.
It is included in the warrant that was sent around this morning, George.
Okay. This guy.
Page 9.
So, do you think we should postpone voting on that until we hear Mark's report?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion. We share Mark's report right now. And then make our decision if we want to keep this wording in there or not.
Does anybody have any comments regarding the new firefighter edition?
So, and one thing in Mark's report, because we had talked about what's changed now that hasn't in 5 years, and why are we so much more than the police station, and they don't need anybody, blah, blah, blah. From what I understood, the police station had already maybe ramped up with some policemen for those new apartments going in, and the firefighters haven't. So that being said, if we're gonna compare apples to apples, you know, maybe does warrant the population's gonna go up, and we need to look at firefighters, especially with that new apartment structure over there. So that's one thing I got out of Mark's report,
Just
so.
the police additions was within that 5-year scope of comparison we had. So the policemen were added during that time.
Okay, so the policemen were added, but the firefighters have not ramped up their staffing since then.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
But what I'm
that's
saying
the
is-
point I was just making,
No,
so.
the 5-year growth in the police department included their people.
Okay,
And the 5-year growth in the fire department does not include any new people, but the discrepancy, not
No, it has
discrepancy.
2 new people.
Oh, yeah, we added them too. So there's been fire department people and police people added in the same 5-year span, Christina.
okay.
So it is pretty much apples and apples, which is not to say we shouldn't be looking at really the need for another 1 or 4 firefighters, which is what Mark attended a meeting for the other day, and you have something to report.
I do. They were very convincing in their reasoning. There was a little pulling of the heartstrings, you know. The example I gave of Tom going out on a call with just him and one other person for this fire up here on Maple Street. And he was in the house crawling around, as he described it, trying to put the fire out. They're talking about retirees. That was the biggest thing, you know, coming down the pike. And Lynn and I were talking about it. She said we would replace them anyway. But, you know, the chief's got about 4 years at most, and there's another fellow who's gonna be 65. He may retire earlier. And I talked about the fact that you know, at this point, we weren't approving it. We weren't approving an additional one. And until the committee, this committee I was on, gives a report. I don't think there's gonna be a report. It wasn't a parliamentary proceeding, you know, we didn't vote. But I asked the other two what their feelings were. Dave Smith said that he was 100% for it. Bill's for it.
Of course, the fire department's for it.
Of course, the fire departments were, and they asked me to consider not kicking the can down the road, is the way they put it. They feel right now that there's a safety issue, a concern with the lack of coverage between 11 at night, 7 in the morning. I said, well, if it's not approved, how what's gonna happen? He said, well, we'll just be underserved in the community. And they want to prepare for the fact that they may not have as many as they have now because of retirements. They don't think people are going to leave. Evidently, people who come here and work in the department stay.
So I guess my confusion is are they assuming people are going to retire and we're not going to let them staff? I guess.
That was so one of the things they commented, there's a mandatory retirement age for us.
Right. No,
Just
yeah.
like a pilot.
Right, of
You have
course.
65, so they can't go on call once they reach 65. So,
Right,
so
so the
you
chief
know
can-
at what time they can't, right? So if you look at the people, when is the first person gonna reach that age? What, I'm asking it, right? It's typical to ask that question, like you look at your staff, you look at your retirement matrix, you say, I'm gonna have so many people retire, and the question is, how long does it take to recruit, hire, and train to backfill that role?
Right.
Right, so that you
Yeah.
wanna be ahead of that curve, not behind the curve,
This is their argument.
which just makes total sense.
Yeah.
That makes total sense.
They want to bring somebody in and get them ready for when they're going to, have to be replaced.
So that.
But are they talking about replacement or adding? This is.
Exactly,
No, it's
exactly
adding.
it.
No, I understand, but I guess from what Paul was just saying and you agreed with, if Bill's falling off in 3 years and they get approval and they get Tim, right, and they have 1 year overlap and then Bill retires because Tim was taking his spot, do they still want to add more or are they just talking about replacing Bill with Tim?
So
wanna
I
add
think the
more.
question needs to be, what is the
Final number.
Well-
optimal staffing level? Full-time firefighters, they want 12 full-time firefighters. So this is just the beginning of that.
Yeah.
So,
Right, and I don't know, when you go and buy a car, the dealer offers you a price that's here. He knows he's not going to get that. And I'm wondering if they're asking for more than they really think they're going to get. But I said, what's your long-term plan? And it's over 5 years. They want to have 12 firefighters.
How many do they have right now full-time?
It's not counting the chief.
Right. But and from my understanding is reading your report also, the increases have gone up because the new ones are getting hired more than the older, than the new they said basically it's the new wages is what brought their budget up so much, is what you put in your report, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I said that, but it's a combination of a lot of things. There's not attrition here, so we have people who are earning more vacation time.
Okay.
So that's another problem. The maximum is 4 weeks.
They educate all of them to be paramedics.
No, and I get all that. I guess my point is
They have a higher,
if they have to offer more of a salary to recruit a new person, and if we're replacing somebody, is it actually gonna increase the cost even more? And it's not gonna be a 1-to-1 replacement, it's gonna be a 1.2 to a 1 replacement. And those are all things we have to think about. I mean, yes, we need firefighters, I'm not saying we don't,
yeah.
but now we just gotta think about it. The long-term plan is they need 5 more in 5 years, we gotta look at other things, too.
I think Lynn brought up an interesting point. The chief pointed out we have 15 medics on the firefighter staff.
Paramedics.
Yeah, medics. And I don't know if there is a premium to be paid. I would imagine there is, because I think it's a 2-year course minimum and a very valuable tool for the fire department. But that could also be adding to it. I don't know, maybe they had 3 at the beginning and now they have 15, so that could be adding to the expansion of the payroll also.
Mark, you indicated that the committee will be meeting again sometime in the future. Is that correct? So will they be providing additional information to get us from the current 7 or 8 this year to the 12 so that we have a stronger understanding of how that comes about?
We didn't talk about the specifics other than we're, going to talk about a 5-year plan and, discuss this need for 12. It's not an urgent situation right now. I asked the question, I said, is it fair to say that this meeting will be it as far as fiscal year '25? And they said, yeah. So there wasn't any vote, there's not going to be any report other than me reporting back. You know, if there was a vote, it would have been at least 4.
Okay, thank
The
you.
vote will occur at the town meeting.
Right, right.
The question is whether we as a finance committee are going to recommend approval or not.
So that goes back to my question before, like, we know, if you have a matrix, you know who's gonna retire when.
Right.
Know that they cannot go on calls at 65.
Right.
So back to, is this person, is it the length of time to recruit and train and get that person line up so that we don't lose a slot? That's my question.
In answer to your question, it's 3 years. This fellow, who's going to be 65 in 3 years, will not have a choice. He does have a choice of retiring earlier, which is a concern they had. So in answer to your question, they didn't say specifically what the training period was and what's involved with the training period. But they, again, asked that we consider not kicking the can down the road, at least for this one.
Maureen?
Yeah, bottom line on it is basically a succession plan, knowing that these people are either ready to retire or getting ready to retire. So, like Paul said, you have that plan in place so that once this person does retire, you have somebody already ready to step in and be ready to roll. So, I mean, that's where they're going, and their 5-year plan, I'm not sure what it is either. I'm guessing every year they're going to ask us for another 1 or 2, just because that's how old people are getting over there.
See, I understood it like Christina had mentioned, that this is not the replacement. This is going from 7 to 8.
Yes.
Okay? So it has nothing to do with who's retiring in 3. We have to hire to that position when it becomes eminent. And maybe it takes a year, maybe it takes 2 years, maybe it takes 3. But this body is not that body. This body is going from 7 to 8. So this is not a succession plan right now. There probably will be one in another year or 2. I don't know how long it takes to train a firefighter, Maureen, but I'm sure it's
Can I
not.
chime in for a moment?
Yeah, is that
Depending
Bill?
on whether it's a full-time or part-time program, a paramedic person getting trained is up to 2 years. So obviously the goal is to find somebody that's already a paramedic and hire them here. So they're really just learning the town and learning, you know, the minor changes from wherever they were, whether it's a private service or another town, to Sterling.
Well, you
Sure.
may or may not know the answer to this, but Dave had mentioned that they had quite a few, or maybe it was Tom, quite a few paramedics, I don't know whether it was 12 or 15, on the call fire force. Would you think that if they had this new opening, they would probably hire from one of their call firemen?
So most of them that are paramedics in other towns. So unless they are interested in coming back to Sterling, if they're working east of here, it probably wouldn't be a good financial move. If they are working west of here, it probably would be a good financial move. But that's obviously somebody's personal, you know, decision on that. But having many of them definitely would potentially be a good feeder system.
So a lot of firemen from other towns serve as call firemen on different towns?
Yeah, so typically a firefighter, paramedic, EMT, whatever their certification is, they work in 24-hour shifts. So if they're working 1 or 2 days a week, depending on how their shift falls out, that gives them other time, and they typically pick them up in here if they live here.
And how about our own firemen that are on that 24-hour shift? Do they use overtime or whatever to fill in?
Sometimes if there's an available shift.
Excuse me, Lynn, I really don't want to get into the operations of a fire department. We're talking about adding another firefighter to the current staffing of 7. Do we think it's prudent at this time to go to 8? Like many things, oftentimes more is better than less, okay? So is 12 better than 7? The chief wants to go there, and it's probably better than 8 in his eyes too. So it's not just a question, is 8 better than 7? It's what can you afford also. So I don't know if there's any more discussion on the cost basis, because that's what we're really talking about here. The chief says 8 is better than 7. I believe him. I believe 9's better than 7, but can we afford that this year? I'm not
Not even
convinced.
this year, it's an ongoing new cost to the
Exactly.
firefighter
And
budget.
I'm not convinced. So, does anybody else want to talk about the cost aspect of it?
I just have one question. What is the offset in the cost that say they hire the new full-time firefighter? Will there be a reduction of the use of the on-call and maybe overtime?
That wasn't projected, is he?
Did they mention anything about that, Mark?
No.
What's that?
If they hired a full-time firefighter, where would they staff them, and would it reduce overtime and other costs?
It's another shift.
We didn't get into that.
Yeah. The way it was depicted, it's an additional person on a night shift, not supplanting overtime. So,
Yeah, so like, Mark was there when I was explaining it, but you know, like the town I live in obviously is, and I think I've mentioned it a few times, going for significant more staffing to increase the staffing piece, but to decrease the overtime. This would be to maintain the services and improve that, because I know the biggest part is not being able to find call people in some shifts to fill the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. part. So if you have a full-timer, it's guaranteeing that staff there.
Thank you, Bill.
okay, so what I'd like to do is see if there's a motion that we can move on with this agenda item. Does anybody want to make a motion concerning our agenda item, which was review and approve the FinCom wording for expected firefighter warrant article? Does anybody want to move that?
Well, I make a movement that we completely change that wording, because Mark just said that they're not gonna meet again, so they've had the meeting. We said we are tabling the discussion until the findings of the meeting. We basically had the meeting. Right, they had one and they're having one the next year, so I think that wording should be completely removed and we should re-vote on something. That's my motion.
So let's go to the intent. The intent of the motion, regardless of the wording, was to not be in favor of adding a firefighter to fire department at this time. Does everybody believe that was the intent of the motion? I mean, our recommendation?
Make a motion to how to word it.
That was the original
That was the original.
intent, as I understood the wording, George, correct?
So does somebody have some verbiage we can use that we can make a motion on?
Well, I motion that we should vote and see if everybody's got a different assessment, because we originally voted no until we heard more about the assessment of this committee. We heard the assessment of the committee, so I make a motion, we vote to see where we stand on whether or not the finance approves or disapproves the addition of the firefighter. That's my motion.
Second.
Okay, that's pretty simple. Okay.
And Mark seconded it.
Okay, is there any discussion regarding that, or have we had enough? So the motion is, do we approve adding an
Or do we
additional,
support whatever we do, yeah.
do we approve adding an additional firefighter to the complement currently on staff for fiscal '25? That's it. Any further discussion? Those that approve, say aye.
Wait.
What are we approving?
I thought we were doing the.
We're approving hiring him.
No, we
That
have to approve the motion.
The motion.
motion was to hire one, I think,
No,
no?
the motion is to actually vote on whether or not we're gonna do it or not.
change what's already been written.
We have to change what we've already said.
So my motion was to allow us to vote on what we
On
stand.
another motion.
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion now regarding this article
We just
As
go
in-
around and ask people what
as-
their opinion
Yeah.
is,
as an up or down?
without voting. Let's
Yeah.
just go around and see.
As a discussion?
Yeah, yeah, as a discussion, whether or not.
I mean, after all this talking about and the ramping up, the succession planning, et cetera, I feel like we could support this proposal, personally. That's me.
For me, it's conditional. So, I have that question, succession planning. If we need to hire somebody, we know somebody's gonna retire, we know by a certain point, and we don't wanna be shorthanded, then it makes sense to approve it. I didn't hear that. I'm always curious about succession planning. I mean, you should have a chart, you should have everybody on there, you should know
Yeah,
exactly when that's gonna be. And
This
when-
is not that, right?
No, this is, they have a man who is gonna be 65 years old in 3 years. So he's definitely gone. The question is, do we want to add a person now to get them, the ball rolling? And like someone said, they're gonna ask every year for one. They're at a point now where they're short-staffed at night. I'm in favor of adding an additional firefighter to fiscal '25.
Lynn?
I'm torn, because as you add a lot of other costs, and if it isn't time to add those costs. And I know that they have all the new apartments and everything, but the revenue for those new apartments is out in the future a little bit. So if the revenue catches up to the costs, or the costs catch up to the revenue, that would be a better situation than doing it right now.
Joe?
I'm kind of sticking to the original committee work, and if we were talking about a replacement and overlap for that, that's a different financial condition.
It's not an article.
Than is a straight up, okay, and it's not covered in the article as well that we're talking about. I'm sticking to, I'd like to see a 5-year plan, because we're working on a 5-year plan right now to try and lay out not only capital, but omnibus for a 5-year period as well. So I'd like to view what the impact is over 5 years, and is it going to trigger a 2.5 event during that 5-year period? I don't know. I'm hearing tonight 12, okay? We heard before 8, okay, going to 8. So that's a different story. And also the story changed when you went to that meeting. Well, we have to worry about succession planning right now for two people that are on staff right now. Well, that's a different story than what's on the warrant article right now. So long way of saying I'm sticking to my original position of not approving.
Okay, and my position is, because this is an addition, not, and the reason it is, Paul, is if this was to replace, it would not have a separate article. Separate articles are for additional staff positions, so it stands on its own. That's what it is. So at this time, much like Paul and Joe, I'm not in favor, and Lynn, I'm not in favor until we see something income-wise to offset the additional cost. Is it better to have 8 than 7? I believe it is. Do we need 8 or do we want 8? And I think that's what it comes down to. And can we this year afford an additional $107,000? I don't think so. It's awful tight as it is. We just skidded by this year, not going into an override, and that's even with the school request. So my opinion is no. So there's some,
She's not on the finance.
No, Ezzy.
Izzy.
she's not on the finance.
Yeah, but what about Izzy?
Oh, Izzy, go.
Eddie,
I-
your turn.
He's a
No, I
computer.
completely agree. I stick with my original assessment from our last meeting. The committee needs to do their work before we have an actual plan in place. I believe they probably need the additional firefighter, but I don't think it's been completely planned out.
Can somebody make a motion then?
Can you repeat that? 'Cause
I didn't
can't
get any
hear.
of that.
He wanted to stick to his original feelings too, that this is not the year,
Okay.
okay? We might need one, but not this year, okay? So can somebody put together verbiage for a motion that the FinCom is comfortable with for that article?
The recommendation?
Yes,
Do we have to do it on the fly here?
yeah, right now.
Because we need a motion.
Because we're gonna vote. There's very few things that are in contention. I'd like to put some to bed tonight.
How about if we just leave it with the Finance Committee does not recommend approval, which is what the first sentence is.
Yep.
The Finance Committee strongly advises against approving this article at this time, period.
Can I interrupt for 1 second?
Certainly.
Why don't you just put does not recommend approval and then speak to it at the meeting?
Perfect.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, I move that the FinCom recommendation be stated as the Finance Committee does not recommend approval of this article. Is there a second?
And feel free to have an asterisk with it.
And feel free to, no, that can't be part of the motion, Bill. Is there a second to that? As simplistic as it might be, says it all. No second. Okay, does somebody else have a suggestion? Okay, so nobody wants to talk about the
I'm too busy writing.
specific article right now. Well, don't write, we have no consensus here.
Was that motion seconded?
No, it was not. There is no anything. So we're gonna move on.
Okay.
Maybe some other day we'll get back to the firefighter.
What about the vote on, okay, that's the first motion.
Yeah.
All right, good.
So what we voted is not to use the one we talked about last week. All right, so the next one is review.
The vote for no recommendation stands, but we don't have wording yet. Is that correct, George?
No, we haven't made a motion to,
Vote to not approve it, yeah.
okay, well, let's try that. I move that the Finance Committee does not recommend adding a firefighter for fiscal '25. There a second to that one?
Seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of that motion? Aye.
Aye.
Oh,
Could you quickly repeat that motion?
the motion was to not approve hiring a new firefighter for fiscal '25. I think that's pretty close to what I said.
So FinCom does not approve hiring? Okay.
And it was seconded by Joe. No further discussion. And I'll call for a vote again.
You
Aye.
should roll call the vote, not
Roll
just
call.
Okay, a roll call on the vote. Izzy?
Yellow eye?
Joe?
This is for approving the addition of a fire.
No, this is
No.
for
Not approving.
Not approving.
Not approving.
Joe.
King, aye.
Handy eye.
Shepherd, aye.
Basho abstain.
Austin, aye.
Okay, that's,
Garfield.
okay, that's 5 ayes, 1 no, 1 abstention. We'll come up with some wording and address that next week. Fair?
Right now, the wording says the Finance Committee does not recommend approval of this article, asterisk.
Do I have a motion to approve that one?
What is the asterisk?
So you can talk to it at the town meeting.
Oh, okay. All right, who's going to talk to it?
It doesn't.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, do I have a motion to approve that verbiage to enter into the article for our recommendation?
I will move to,
and I will second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Good. All in favor of that verbiage? Let's do a roll call. Izzy?
Aye.
King, aye.
Handy eye.
Shepherd, aye.
Basho abstain.
Austin, no.
This is the asterisk?
Yes.
No, this is the statement
It's the statement that includes the asterisk.
that
Yes.
includes it.
Say no.
Okay, so that's,
Can I ask why you say no? Do you know like that wording?
No, I don't like that wording at all.
because you like the intent. Do you have better wording?
Yeah, not asterisk.
All right, take out the asterisk. All right, so the motion will read, Finance Committee.
Can I interrupt one more time?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Go.
You have until next Wednesday, you don't have to hash it all out right now.
Well, we're that close, Bill, so we want to get this done. So the
Okay, I can't
motion,
hear everything, so I just figured I'd chime in.
and no, we appreciate your input.
That's how I interpret an asterisk.
So
You say
the-
an asterisk, you say, well, I'm saying it, but I'm not really saying it.
Okay, so the Finance Committee does not recommend approval of this article.
Period.
Period. The end. Okay, roll call. Izzy?
Aye.
King eye.
Handy eye.
Shepherd, aye.
Lasho abstain.
Austin, I.
Well, you know.
Okay, so that's five,
What was yours, Mark?
no, 5 ayes, 1 no, Mark,
One abstention.
and Christina abstention. Great, we can move on. Okay. Review and approve the content and wording for April Meeting House news article. Easy for me to say. Okay, Liz,
Liz.
go.
All right, you've all received the latest copy today. I guess based upon what just occurred, the fire department staffing, the last two sentences, make sure that you still feel good about them. I will read them. Mid-March, the Select Board formed a fire department staffing plan committee which will assess and recommend the level of fire department staffing needed for Sterling. The Finance Committee recommends deferring the decision on this staff increase at the annual town meeting until the Fire Staffing Committee report is concluded.
I think it's still.
It still holds?
I don't know, Mark said there wasn't a vote, so they really didn't present a,
Yes, but they're
Recommendation.
planning on meeting in the future. So
is the word recommendation in there, Liz?
where are you suggesting it?
No.
The Finance Committee recommends deferring the
No, for
decision
the
On the-
fire
until-
staffing.
until the Fire Staffing Committee report is concluded?
Okay, that works.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it.
Can we ask Bill if there is gonna be a vote, or are we gonna go,
Bill?
we gonna go beyond what we did yesterday?
Bill, did you hear that? Mark was wondering where that committee is going from here. Do you have any knowledge?
Yeah, yesterday's meeting, like we said, was mostly for this year, and then we will start focusing on future years. I don't know when we will reconvene.
Okay, at some point you'll come up with a plan, maybe a 5-year, 3-year, 4-year or something, I would assume. Is that the intent?
Yes, we are looking at how they, obviously they have a goal of where they want to be and where they believe they need to be based on the call volume. If their number is 12, like I think that was the number, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have the paper in front of me. That's going to take some planning over the next 5 or 6 years. So whether it's one a year or a couple in one hit, it's definitely going to happen at some point, I think. We are fortunate to have a fairly robust call force compared to many of our neighboring towns, but as Mark mentioned from our meeting yesterday, several of the busiest members are aging out in the next couple of years, so that is going to greatly decrease the people that are available.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, so let's get some opinions on Liz's article. Does anybody have any comments regarding the entirety of the article? Some edits, changes? Do we want it to go as is?
I've incorporated all the edits I've received so far.
Okay. So you've seen the product to date.
Yes.
And should we get a consensus? Do we want this to be processed for the April edition of Meeting House News?
Yeah, I would make a motion to submit that article as Liz has presented it to us.
Any seconds?
A second.
So there's one change, just grammar, it's not a big deal.
Oh, that's okay.
Go.
Punctuation, that's all.
Well, catch me
Yeah,
out.
no, punctuation.
Oh, okay.
punctuation.
All right. So I
I
have
want to say
a,
as is, because you said as is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
so I have
That's a
a,
lot of fun.
I have a motion and a second. The motion was by Lynn to forward that letter to Meeting House News, subject to minor grammatical corrections.
Yes.
All right.
Grammar police.
And it was made by Lynn, seconded by Mark. Is there any further discussion? Good. Take a vote. Izzy,
Aye.
you're up.
He said aye.
Oh, okay.
King eye.
Andy, aye.
Shepherd, aye.
Bashwa, aye.
Austin, I.
Gothier, aye.
Okay, unanimous.
Nice work.
Thank you.
All right, follow up on select board comments, approval of superintendent letter, and discuss and approve next steps. Joe? Any thoughts, comments? Where it stands?
Where it stands is I got a quick acknowledgement of receipt of that request for the superintendent's letter at the last select board meeting that we had just preceding the actual superintendent coming in. So there wasn't a lot of interchange other than Maureen indicated she's on board with it, and it will be on the agenda for the upcoming 27th select board meeting to approve that at the select board level and then send the letter out.
Okay, so it won't be on this agenda, they have it tomorrow.
There is no meeting tomorrow.
Oh, there is
That's
not?
next week.
It's every other week.
Oh, okay.
Right. So the next meeting we have is one that we're going to walk through the warrant with the select board. But in addition to that, this item will be one of the agenda items. Maureen told me on the way up today.
It's unfortunate Superintendent Riley doesn't know the FinCom's position on, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay,
Well,
so,
he may if he's watching the TV.
well, there is that. Okay, so,
I'm sure he's not a stupid man and knows no town is happy with him right now, so.
all right, so, that's the status?
That
The
is-
27th, we'll know what's going on?
The 27th, the rest of the select board will get to vote on whether they want to forward that. Maureen indicated she was affirmative on it, but we'll wait for the select board vote on that.
Gotcha.
To confirm it. Okay.
Any other comments regarding this agenda item? Seems like a sit and wait. All right, next one. Conduct follow-up review and discussion of the 313 Joint Select Board FinCom WRSD meeting. I'd like to preface our discussions, just to expedite this whole thing. I think we've talked about the WRSD budget pretty extensively. And we've come to a conclusion, the select board is in total agreement, that there's actually going to be 2 warrant articles for WRSD. I believe it's Article 2 and Article 3. Article 2 is essentially to vote on the non-discretionary spending that our WRSD has put forth. That would be the minimum required contribution that DESI calculates, plus our assessed value for the transportation and our assessment for the debt service, and those are pretty much inflexible. So that is going to be Article 2, and perhaps knowing that is the essence, maybe we can make a motion to, for our recommendation on the warrant right now, and put almost 50% of the entire budget to rest on our recommendations. So I would move that the FinCom approve Article 2. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Let's have a vote. Izzy? Wake up.
Yellow eye, sorry.
Okay. Joe?
King eye.
Andy, aye.
Shepherd, aye.
Basho, aye.
Austin, aye.
Izzy, that's like working at home, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, your boss has to wake you up every hour. All right, so the second article, Article 3, that is in reference to the Wachusett Regional School District budget, is specifically aimed at the discretionary request of the school district. So that is why there is two separate articles, and if history serves properly, that was the format up until 2018, and it was changed for one reason or another. So anyway, we all have talked about the discretionary request by the district infinitum. They're requesting an additional 20% over fiscal '24. They had a meeting with us and the select board back on the 13th. I'm not sure we were all satisfied with the explanation as to, A, what constitutes the whole discretionary spending, and B, why is there a 20% increase? So anyway, that's going to be a vote unto itself too. So I would make a motion that the FinCom does not approve,
Recommend.
does not recommend, yes, Article 3, no asterisks, period.
Seconded.
Now, some of our members couldn't attend that one. Do we want to say anything about the superintendent's arguments as to why it's that
I don't need
big?
to hear them.
You don't need to hear them?
I heard them, I went to the other meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to the school to
Yeah.
hear what they're,
He
Okay,
was at the original meeting.
yeah, the original meeting.
all right.
One of the things he did mention that was noteworthy about his discussion on the budget that I took to heart was, I'm not that pleased about this budget increase because none of it really goes to the improvements for the students. Okay, that was,
So where's it going?
Ta-da.
It's basically, my opinion from what he said was that last year they added 10 people.
10 staff.
And invested in a new curriculum and some things, thinking that they had it covered in the budget, but they really didn't because they hadn't reconciled last year's budget yet. And then this year, they didn't get the funding that they thought they would get from the state. And therefore, just to maintain where they are, what they did last year and where they are right now, they need the additional funds.
So you're saying that they're continuing the trend of not managing the money?
Right.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
So if we give them by now,
It's just a new administration doing it, Paul. Okay, any further discussion? We have a motion to not recommend. We have a second by Joe. All in favor? Izzy?
Aye.
Joe?
king eye.
Handy, aye.
Shepherd, aye.
Basho, aye.
Austin, aye.
You're right.
All right, so that's unanimous.
Now,
Now that-
do we need to or want to say anything about it? If they vote down the second half, they're really voting down?
We can do that at town meeting if somebody asks a question.
So to close this out, the recommendation stands is Finance Committee does not recommend approval. That's it.
Correct, period. No asterisks.
Right.
Okay. The other thing was, okay, so that's almost half of our entire budget we just wiped out. The other one I'd like to attack is Article 4, which is Money Tech. They only have one article, Article 4, they do not have two. And the reason for that is all of their request of the town is essentially non-discretionary. It is the minimum required contribution as dictated by DESI, plus our share of transportation and debt service. So that's why there's one article, there's not two. So I would make a motion that the Finance Committee recommend acceptance of the Article 4.
Second.
Any further discussion? I'd just like to point out, it was an astronomical increase, it's 11.5%, but Monty Tech had nothing to say about that. It's straight from the state. Unfortunately, we're pinned with it.
And can I chime in real quick?
Yep.
They'll be presenting first at the meeting on Wednesday.
Oh, terrific.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Bill. All right, so is there any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a roll call. Izzy?
Aye.
Joe?
King eye.
Andy, aye.
Shepherd, aye.
Lashwa, aye.
Austin, aye.
Coffee, right?
Okay, so we've taken care of 50% of the budget. Doing good. The other piece I really wanted to address is the omnibus budget itself, because if you look at the warrant that was sent out, it references the omnibus budget. That's what the warrant's all about. The last omnibus budget we had, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, is the one you sent out on March 7th. Since that point, there should be the extraction of the new firefighter.
Yeah, so I'm just waiting on one more thing on the new debt service, and I should have the full version, which includes the firefighter for, math purposes, and then the one that would be the warrant version, which I can send out hopefully tomorrow or Thursday.
Oh, that'll be a big help. So, we're, getting old is not for the faint of heart. What the hell was I talking about, Joe?
Omnibus budget.
Oh, yeah.
The other 50%.
Yeah, okay. So as I recall, we were going over the omnibus budget about a month ago and going by department, and it really pretty well hit all of the departments. And we had no more questions. We were in alignment with what they were requesting. And
The Board of Health.
the Board of Health sticks to mind that that was not one of the things that we had resolved. And I just happen to have something that I might be able to address regarding that.
You sent that.
Oh, I did?
Yeah.
Here, let me see if I got it here.
Okay. And I think that might have been virtually,
This is what you sent us.
okay. Thanks. Did everybody have an opportunity to read that email? I should read it because this is now a public discussion. In reviewing the omnibus budget, I noticed that one of the items we had not resolved was the Board of Health request. Since Paul had asked the agent specifically why the Board of Health payroll had climbed from $100,400 to $165,553 over 5 years, a 64.9% increase, and the agent did not have a response, but told Paul that he would get back to him with an explanation. And he apparently hasn't. I suggest that the FinCom recommend a total FY25 budget amount for the Board of Health of $139,543, which is consistent with the overall Sterling municipal government payroll growth over this time period, plus the department's other expenses. So essentially what that does is it allows the payroll that started at $100,400 5 years ago to grow at 7.64%, which has been the average payroll growth of the town.
Over 5 years?
Yeah, ta-da. Correct. So we average 7.6% growth in payroll cost every year.
I guess I'd like to ask Bill's input on that, because I know we had the compensation study. I don't know if that affects the Board of Health in any way, shape, or form, but could you comment on that, Bill?
Both positions in that office were part of the compensation study.
So that would be part of their increase, right?
Yep. And at least, and one of them hit a longevity milestone my first year here. Under the previous bylaw.
So would you be in favor of reducing their total amount down to, what, 7 point? Over 5
Actually,
years?
Lynn, this discussion is for the finance committee, so it's open for discussion with the finance committee members. Then we can ask Bill. So do any of the finance committee members have any comments?
So it's a question.
Yeah.
So I asked the question, right, specifically about the wage growth. And I would have I didn't expect an answer back to me. I expected an answer, I'm asking the question on behalf of the finance committee and the liaison.
I have not received one either.
So you didn't hear anything?
You got it,
So, okay. That's all I was curious about.
okay? Sort of says it all.
Yep.
Okay, any other comment regarding this?
I guess, when we see the other departments and the effect of the compensations study on their payrolls, it hasn't been consistent as to how much they've grown.
That's why I took a broad view of the entire town's payroll. It flattens out discrepancies. It flattens out the fire department's 80% increase and the police department's, was it 16% for whatever reason. So you look at a big picture to try to refine it down to something that makes sense. And since neither Paul nor I as the liaison or the committee got a response, it apparently wasn't a top conversation. So is there any further discussion?
So yours, can you just explain to me one more time, your percentage you came up with, that was a per person percentage looking at all the town employees?
It's the spreadsheet I sent out about twice over our meetings. It was the Sterling personnel payroll. I'll remind you, if you want me to, I'll pull it up again.
No, just,
I mean, I don't send these
So
things
you're-
out, Lynn, so that they take some time to create.
no, I'm not asking you to go back to it, I'm just asking you, you took the total payroll of the town, police, fire, everybody.
No, I took department by department and apparently you don't recall, so let me find it. It won't take that long. It's in here somewhere, okay, payroll. Workbooks,
Was that certain payroll facts?
no.
No. Refresh your comparative?
That's it, here it is, budget to actual personnel. There it is, okay? So, Lynn, just to refresh you, okay?
So George?
I said,
Just one point, Liz brought it up in our meeting, which was, if you look at the spending on the wages, the way it was tracking the same as the previous year. So it wasn't actually bumping up, if I remember correctly, like the mid-year point, you mentioned that. So there wasn't really, the spending rate year-to-date looked on track with the previous year, without an increase.
well,
So if you're gonna bump
It's
it
actually-
next year.
the budget for '25 overall for the town is actually a better percentage increase over '24's budget than '24 was to '23. '24 is where the impact of that study really hit, and the payroll, right there, Lynn.
Yeah,
Okay?
10.56%.
The town payroll actually increased 10.56% over the previous actual payroll. This year, it's looking at a 7.4% increase overall. So over the 5 years, it's actually grown at 7.8%, which is pretty consistent. There were a couple of low ones and a peak one in '24. So that's where that came from,
So
because we have nothing else to base it on.
a yearly so each year, a 7.8% increase.
Would have gotten us to the same number right now.
Okay.
That makes
So
sense?
for the Board of Health, you're suggesting.
You
the
start
7.
on base one, at 7.8% per year.
Every year, okay,
And that's the number,
okay,
including the other expenses in their budget.
all right, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I thought you were saying for the total 5 years, you go from year minus 5, 7.8%. It
No.
didn't seem like enough.
It's every year.
Okay.
Val?
What is that number again? Was it 139?
$139,543. Now, what this brings up, because the warrant is closed, and I don't think we can change, and nobody's going to change the warrant for this anyway. So what it brings up is our recommendation part, to either recommend approval of
The whole budget?
the way it works, Article 1 takes the whole omnibus budget and throws it into the pie and say, you want to spend 13 million, X number of dollars this year. You can hold out anything you want out of that discussion for further discussion. So if you wanted to hold out, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, I've never been into the moderator role. If you wanted to hold out the Board of Health Department and proceed with Article 1, extracting the Board of Health Department for further discussion, you can then proceed, or how's it work, Bill? Do you then discuss the Board of Health, come up with a resolution, then go back to Article 1?
I believe so.
Okay, so you'd hold out something, for sake of argument, you hold out the Board of Health, and you say, they're asking for X number of dollars. The Finance Committee has recommended against it because, and we are further recommending that the end dollar amount be blah, 139,000, okay? Then, I believe then town meeting actually votes on that bill, and if it's an up or a down, if they say yay, then that is the number that supplants the original number in the omnibus budget, and then the vote for the omnibus budget is lowered or raised by whatever the delta was. Is that how it works?
Make sure you have all the math available.
Yeah, I'm just looking at how it works, Bill, not so much the
That's how it
arithmetic.
works. You can pick it apart line
Yeah,
by line.
we can do the arithmetic, that's why Excel is here. It's a great tool. So, anyway, that's what I want, because that was, I think, the last department, now that we've discussed the fire department, I think that was the only other one we were gonna talk about. And then we're on board with Bill's latest addition to his omnibus budget, once we get past the Board of Health. So,
Sam's the firefighter.
yeah, well, he's not part of this Article 1. So, this comes down to, do we want to recommend, do we want to, what the hell is it, hold the request by the Board of Health at town meeting for further discussion on the amount they requested there? I think that says it. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Okay.
I'll motion
So,
that.
George, I just want to be clear, George, do you want to withhold the Board of Health budget for further discussion, or do you want to pull it as a second warrant article, separated from the omnibus budget?
No, I don't think Bill really wants to be holding up the entire warrant for a $200,000 item. I think it's just hold out that one item, Izzy, I think would really simplify matters. And we're not talking big dollars. I think the difference is 20,000, 25,000 maybe. So doing the arithmetic and changing Article 1 from whatever it is, 13,500,000 to 13,480,000, the arithmetic is simple and we can do that. So I think that'd work better, Izzy, than having a separate article.
Okay.
So, is that something everybody thinks is a good idea, bad idea?
I made a motion.
Oh, To do just
To
that?
do just that.
I second
What
it.
you just described.
All right, any further discussion?
So that's a motion to hold out
The Board of
the
Health?
Board of Health portion of the omnibus budget.
Right.
Until further discussion.
Correct.
Do you have to supply a reason why you're doing that?
We will. The reason we're doing that is to address town meeting specifically on that item. And only if we choose not to recommend it. Okay?
Why?
Because if we're going to recommend it, it makes no sense to hold it.
Paul said about they won't even respond to our simple request. Is that anything to do with it? Part in the warrant?
I'm sorry?
Paul mentioned they wouldn't even respond to his simple request.
Correct.
For an explanation.
Correct.
Do we include that? Should I
No,
include
no,
that?
no,
in
no,
there?
no.
Okay, okay.
So I wonder if your motion is premature. Should we first, do we want to recommend or not recommend the Board of Health's budget request?
You're correct, it could be premature.
Yeah, so I move that we,
Take a vote on whether to think about withholding that 25,000.
or, no, I think we first have to make a recommendation
It would be
on
motion
the omnibus budget.
that the FinCom recommends
Yeah,
changing
so it's
the
got to
Board of
be,
Health
yeah, you're right,
amount.
you've got to specify specifically holding it out. Okay, all right, so there's a motion to hold it, there's a second. Any further discussion? This is kind of tricky because I'm not,
That's Joe and George. Joe?
because parliamentary, I think this is how it's done, and Bill seems to concur, so. All right, all in favor of the motion of holding the Board of Health at town meeting?
Holding out.
Yeah, the Board of Health request. All in favor, Izzy?
Aye.
King eye.
Handy aye.
I abstain.
Lashwa, aye.
Austin, aye.
You're right.
Okay, so it's 6 ayes and 1 abstention by Lynn.
7 ayes, right? Could be 7.
6.
They're at 7
Seven.
total on the, I don't, I'm only
Liz
counting.
doesn't count.
I'm only counting.
So that's the first motion. And now we
And
have,
that's the only one we
That's it.
need.
but you're not gonna vote on their request?
How about the?
Are you going to vote on the amount that you want to recommend? You've got an amount, you've suggested an amount, don't you want to vote that that is the amount that you recommend or not?
Well, oh, yeah, is everybody comfortable with the explanation as to how it was derived, and does it make sense? And okay, then I move, in our discussion at town meeting, we move that the Board of Health overall budget number for fiscal '25 be $139,543. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Izzy?
Ayala, aye.
King eye.
Handy aye.
Abstain?
Lashwa, aye.
Austin, aye.
You're right.
6 ayes and 1 abstention by Lynn. Thank you, Liz. I almost forgot what we were trying to do.
It's easier when I'm not part of FinCom. One
When
step
you-
back.
This motion to recommend this new amount, you can't qualify it, or should you qualify it?
We will at town meeting,
So, well, okay.
because somebody's going to ask, where'd you come up with that number?
Wouldn't it be easier to put it in now?
No,
No.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm not even sure you can. Okay, so moving on. Review the markup. So I think we've now polished off the omnibus budget as far as departments go,
So do we have to?
which is
vote-
fantastic.
Vote to approve the omnibus budget?
No, because Bill hasn't finished yet.
Okay.
We've only approved the departments. We haven't gone, I think he said he's
There
still.
is a final omnibus budget to approve.
Right,
Those
yeah.
got some changes.
So we gotta, Bill said he'll get it out to us tomorrow or the day after, and we can hit that for the next Tuesday.
So Bill, I got a question. Did we just give you a ton of more work for having to pull out that line item, or?
Oh, I couldn't hear that. What was it?
So just by us voting on that Board of Health, do you have to kind of pull that out of the omnibus now, or?
No,
No, that's just something we'll talk about.
that's a move the
That's an
finance
asterisk.
committee makes
It'll be
when
a
Article
dispute.
1 is presented.
It'll be a floor dispute.
So it's an asterisk.
No asterisks.
It's a non-asterisk asterisk.
That
Yeah.
one's
So, the other thing I wanted to bring on real briefly before we move forward. We all know we were really tight this year on tripping over a 2.5 override, okay? The way it was avoided, I'm gonna be straight up, was not by deep cost cutting. It was by No, it was by financial maneuvering to salvage the budget. We're taking additional monies, which are justified out of the ambulance receipts to cover the ambulance costs like we always had done until 2 years ago. We're financing the road work as it should be done, giving flexibility to the DPW over the next 3 years, which is a good horizon for them. What else did we do?
And that does bring the expense line down, that move.
Considerably.
To do the finance.
Both of them.
Right.
So those were worth about $300,000. We had something else too, I don't know what it was. So what it boils down to is we set up a goal at the beginning of this meeting to restrict or try to control municipal spending to 4%. I believe we were pretty successful. If my calculations are correct, Bill's budget is coming in at an increase of 3.83% for municipal. I find that absolutely terrific. No, I'm wrong. It's coming in at 2.88% over fiscal '24. I sent this sheet out to everybody. Bill, congratulations, that's a great job. The only problem is the schools didn't listen to Bill, okay? And combined, they increased their spending by $672,000 that they're requesting. Bill's budget went up $329,000, staying well shy of the $400,000 the FinCom had set at a target. Unfortunately, the schools weren't listening. So, we've come very close to doing the 2.5. Some of the flexibility we have this year, we will not have in the preceding years. So one of the recommendations or thoughts was something that had been done, the Finance Committee had done on recommendations up until 2018. Actually, it was, when did it start? What was the first year? 2009.
Up through FY '22, actually.
From 2009 to 2018, nonstop, they supplemented the omnibus budget costs for the town to ease the tax burden on the taxpayers every year, ranging from $10,000 in 2015 to $695,000 in 2012, and they were using the stabilization fund as a method of evening out the tax rate and preserving some of the excess levy capacity, which was another goal of ours of maintaining the excess levy capacity at $500,000, which is really squishy on a $28 million budget. We all knew that had gone down from $1 million only a couple of years ago. So this is not, and in 2021, actually, 300,000 was utilized from the stabilization fund to once again assist in the protecting the excess levy capacity and flattening out the tax rate. So one suggestion, since we're so close, to get us back up to $500,000 in excess levy capacity is to either use free cash or use the stabilization fund for a total of $240,000 to bring it in to offset some of the costs in the budget, primarily the school, okay? To bring them down to reasonable, so that we will then have our $500,000 excess levy capacity cushion again. So it's not something that is unique. If it comes out of the stabilization fund, we can then move $240,000 of free cash into the stabilization fund, so it's a wash, okay? And that's what the stabilization fund is there for, is to stabilize the tax rate. So that is a suggestion to put on the table. I'd like to hear some thoughts on it.
So, I get it, I appreciate it, but is it a shell game? And at some point, is the free cash and the stabilization fund gonna disappear? And are we just kicking the can down further, and are we doing what we just accused the schools of doing?
It's a great point, and so can I see that sheet? Sure. I'll address that.
So I think.
So excuse me, I'm just gonna respond to Christina. So from the years 2009 to 2018, nonstop, okay, for 10 straight years, they did this in varying amounts. So it's not kicking the can down the road.
But they did it, but now we're in 2024, and now we're coming up
And in
against the wall.
2021, they also did it.
Agree, and now we're coming up against the wall again, so did it kick the can down the road?
No, it didn't, because, first of all, free cash is not a one-time revenue source. We all know that.
Guaranteed.
We all know that. It's because it should be worked into a budget between 3% and 5%. If we're not doing that, then that's a whole different ballgame. So counting on free cash at a 4% rate every year, you should do it. It's part of the budgeting process. It's how you pay for other stuff, like painting schoolhouses and stuff, okay? So that is a revolving source of revenue. So using stabilization fund to flatten out the tax rate and assist in not using our entire excess levy capacity is using recoverable resources. Using the free cash is not a one-time source. If you want to use the stabilization fund, you're right, it's washing it. It's taking free cash, put in stabilization, take it out of stabilization.
What has the stabilization fund done? The value of it, how has it fluctuated since it's been done consistently over the last 13
It
years?
increases about $200,000 a year, Joe?
Okay. For the last 3 years, we've added.
Okay.
At the end of this year, we'll add a total of $600K to that. We've been pretty religious
Well,
about.
we're gonna add 600K to it, but we're taking 200 out.
Right,
Taking
that-
240 out,
Yeah,
So, and technically it's going up by 840?
yeah.
No.
It will go up to 840, and then we'll use 240 as stabilization to go into the omnibus.
or bypass the stabilization and just take it out
Yeah,
of free
the
cash.
the way I look at it, Christina, is, and I told George this before, if we don't use the stabilization fund or free cash in a manner like this, it'll roll. It'll roll into next year's free cash, and guaranteed we'll spend it on stuff. And kind of my position is I'd rather spend it on taxpayers than on stuff, okay? And that's the way it'll happen. It'll accumulate along with the rest of the 4% that we have is free cash.
I wanna hear what Liz had to say, because she wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think that your comment about kicking it down the road would apply only if you had the same relationship of revenue to expenses. But if we were to, and we know that we've got we've got the apartment complex coming in, so that will increase revenues. Some of us attended the Economic Development Forum, which is also looking at ways. We know that senior housing in particular does not come with the same taxpayer burden as four-bedroom homes with kids going to Wachusett, those kinds of things. So if the stabilization fund is that word, stabilizing, trying to stabilize those little ups ups and bring them more to a consistent trend line. And in conjunction with that, if we can change that relationship of the revenue to the expenses, then we will lessen this up motion.
There is a goal too, Christina, which I totally forgot to bring up. If you looked at the revenue forecast sheets that we sent out, you'll notice in fiscal '27, there's a big bump. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? And part of the rationale of this was to get to fiscal '27, okay? So you need help in '25, probably need help in '26, and that buys you to '27. Because once you get the bump, that bump is inbred into the calculations for the tax levy.
Agree.
It doesn't go away.
My concern is, sure, we get that tax levy bump, but everything else bumps out, so we're I mean, I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying for conversational sake, I do a lot of budgeting, looking at retirees who think this is what their expenses are and this is what my revenue is gonna be, and they turn around 5 years later and go, yeah, I need 3 times as much, and I'm like, yeah, you're gonna run out of money in 10 years. And it's just one of those, we're expecting this bump of revenue in 3 years, absolutely, but is all of a sudden the police department gonna come to us and say they need 4 more people, and the fire department's gonna need more fire truck, et cetera, and I agree the stabilization fund is to smooth out those things. Are we just
No,
looking forward enough to know?
the stabilization fund is to smooth out the tax rate, considering the omnibus operating budget, not somebody saying I need a fire truck. That's the capital investment fund. It is strictly for operating expenses. So, yeah, same thing. If they come and say, we need 5 more firemen,
2 more policemen and.
that's the finance committee's responsibility. Can you afford it? That's what we're doing this year.
That's why, if you talk about the raise in the revenues, like when you talk about the school's the big 50%, right?
Right.
So we're sending a message to the schools, you can't keep going down this road. The other big one is payroll, right? So the payroll issue is not, that's part of the reason why I said no, is I didn't hear enough that said that they've really vetted the concept, and it's not restricted to the firefighters.
No, exactly.
Right?
That's
It's
my
bigger than
concern.
that. We have to think about all that. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. We have to look at the whole picture, not just one department, and say, what services can we provide and what can we afford, given our revenue stream? And even in economic development, if I learned anything, is we're not getting any more revenue anytime soon.
Right.
Besides that, that's what I learned at that.
And that's kind of my point, so yeah, I get what we're saying, we're trying to reduce this, but if it's only gonna be a slight increment this year, and we can get rid of it by using the stabilization plan, great, but what if all of a sudden in 5 years, something happens, and now all of a sudden, instead of it's X to the 9th power, because we did this, and we don't have enough stabilization plan, we don't have enough free cash. This is just my only concern, that,
The free cash
Kind of
would,
look at it, that despite wanting to use the stabilization fund, the stabilization fund's actually growing this year while we're using it. So there's really not a lot wrong with that, Christina. Okay,
I'm not saying it's wrong, I mean, I don't know why you guys are accusing me of saying it's wrong, I'm just asking questions and paying the devil's advocate so that we can all hash everything out. I mean, I know the 2 of you made up your mind, absolutely, so, but it's not like I'm saying it's wrong, I'm just saying you need to look 5 years down the road, not just at revenue, but as expenses, that's all.
Let me ask you-
I just want that on record, that's it.
let me ask a question then. What is the general consensus? Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? You know how tight it was this year. You know we're trying to fight our way to '27. You know we don't have a viable 5-year capital plan. I think that's been brought up by Paul and
Yes.
blessed by everybody else. We have absolutely 0 5-year omnibus plan. We have the rudiments of a 5-year revenue forecast now. So we're talking about 5 years down the road. We don't have a clue. Okay?
Exactly, that was my point.
But
That
we
was
do-
exactly my point.
Okay, what we do have a clue on, Christina, is in fiscal '27, we're gonna get a bump in revenue. Like I say, we do have a reasonable 5-year revenue projection.
And we do know '26 is gonna be tight again.
And, yes, exactly.
Yes.
So we're gonna be doing this
This gives us a little bit of
again.
breathing room for '26 that we know is gonna be bad.
But are we, I mean, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how 100% sure is this revenue bump coming in '27?
90. The buildings are already being built.
The
buildings there, it's just like, let's gotta do occupancy and fill up, and there's 74 units, and you just
One looks
multiply by the
pretty
number of people.
fully occupied, the other one's like 100.
Those are our numbers, Christina, those came from Bill. Okay, so,
That we can.
yeah, I don't know what's going on in this town. I'm
And
too
if we
old.
didn't put free cash into the stabilization fund so we could take money out of it, where would
like
that
that, Lynn?
free cash go?
Yeah.
Into the general fund?
No, it just
No,
sits
it'll
there and
roll.
rolls to next year.
Just rolls to next
It'll
year.
roll
It's-
in, and
And
you'll
you know
spend it
how
on stuff.
we use, yeah, we use it for a lot of those little capital projects that aren't
Yeah.
really capital.
Well, I mean, and that's, okay, yeah, I mean, I'm not against it. I'm not against it, I'm contrary to what you guys think, I'm not against
So
it.
let's get a
I just
consent.
wanna have a conversation of,
Yep.
it's
Okay.
not the perfect solution, and it potentially
Nobody said
could
it
cause
was.
more problems.
So,
That's-
now, we've had that discussion, now, let's get a consensus. Should we put this forward to Bill as a committee, that we would really like to see, let's say, 240 incorporated into the revenue stream in the warrant request from the taxpayers? Because one of the things in the warrant, in Article 1, it's actually showing this is what we need for municipal spending, this is where we're projecting revenues are coming from, this is what the tax implications are for the tax levy. We're saying we want to show that 240 in that other income, which will directly affect the tax levy, right? Yeah,
Reduce the raise and appropriate portion.
dollar for dollar by $240,000.
And if our prior practice was to take it out of the stabilization fund?
Yeah. Same thing.
Hey, no, it's the same thing, so we can follow
Wash
that.
account at the
Yeah,
end.
Yeah, as
If that
Joe
makes it
mentioned,
more
it's money,
acceptable.
it's money laundering.
yeah. I'm with it, I'm with you on that.
That was Joe's term.
But, I understand.
So, as a consensus, do we want to bring this to Bill's attention, that as a committee, we are in favor of doing that? Paul, your thoughts?
About 5-year planning?
No, on the 240.
240 from the stabilization or free cash towards,
Offsetting the tax levy.
Maybe before we get there, Bill has shared with us that revenue forecast. It's rudimentary now, I guess that was the term you used, but it's enough to know where our excess levy capacity is for the next 5 years using that. If we don't do this year, we will make it through this year if we don't do it. We'll end up with about 180,000 excess levy capacity, which is not a lot given our budget. If the firefighter gets approved at town meeting, there's probably a pretty good likelihood of that happening. And we go negative on excess levy capacity next year. That's pretty predictable. This saves us by reducing the raise and appropriate. It preserves that excess levy capacity so that next year, if we treat it similarly next year, that is, fund the stabilization and use some of the stabilization, we'll probably grow the stabilization again next year and preserve our excess levy capacity to get through to that fiscal 2027 mark when we get a revenue bump. And we glide through it nicely. The other thing I'll highlight is we haven't had a 2.5 overrides in 18 years. And the last time we had a 2.5 override, it was for something. It wasn't for nothing, okay? This would be essentially a 2.5 override next year. Be like Rutland did it. They just did it because they couldn't keep up with the expenses of the school. That one was about a $500,000 2.5 override in 2006, 18 years ago, to preserve the trash collection in the town here. That was a big issue. And that pushed that in the right direction so that taxpayers could continue to enjoy that back then. So my view is it's a prudent use of money, it's a traditional use of money. I mean, on 16 years that we looked at, 11 out of the 16 years, they used the stabilization fund as a normal course of business to smooth things out, which is what stabilization is for. So we live to fight another day and get through to enjoy that revenue bump if we do that without exposing the taxpayers to a 2.5 override, which seems quite likely next year, not this year, but next year, if we don't do something.
So I'm in favor of it. Joe?
I'm obviously quite in favor.
Lynn?
Are we voting, like, is this a?
No, this is a consensus.
Consensus, I'm in favor.
Okay. Christine?
Yes.
Abstain. I mean, I'm in favor, but I just feel like I'm just concerned.
Okay,
It's
Paul?
not as
I'm
Shangri-La.
gonna abstain too.
Pardon?
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. Mark?
Okay,
Okay, so I'll pass it on, to Bill.
Izzy,
Izzy,
Yes,
wake up.
Are you in favor of it?
I was looking over the capital part of the town warrant. Sorry, you lost me in the example.
This was to use either free cash or the stabilization fund as an input stream to the tune of 240,000.
To preserve the excess levy capacity this year.
What's the current balance in the stabilization?
it's currently about 950,000, and it'll go up to just a little over 1.1 million
Okay,
with our addition this year, Izzy.
okay.
It's fairly healthy.
In Fred's February report, it was at 1.1 mil.
Oh, okay. So 1.1 mil.
And it'll be 1.3 mil after this warrant gets approved, because another 200K is going into it.
Okay.
Fairly healthy.
Yeah, I'd be in support of utilizing stabilization, but not free cash.
All right, we'll pass that on to Bill tomorrow, unless he's still here.
Bill's
So
still here.
Yeah, I'm still here, so I'm just confirming that you are looking to create a bigger structural deficit.
240,000 from stabilization fund to offset the municipal costs, actually.
So you're looking to create a structural deficit.
Correct. Okay, so, all right. So that's what we're going to recommend. We use that to lower the tax levy for the taxpayers, okay?
So if you look at our neighboring towns of West Boylston and Paxton, who are in the same boat of using free cash regularly on their budget, and now basically you have to make up that difference plus whatever you're spending when you get to the point of up against that limit. So make sure we're all on the same page with that one.
Correct.
Yes.
We are. Okay. So, moving on.
So we're looking to take it out of the stabilization fund.
Correct.
It's neutral.
Yeah, because
I don't
you're,
care whether you
Doesn't matter.
call it free cash or stabilization.
gotcha.
If you want to call it stabilization, we will move 240K into stabilization in addition to the 200K, and then
Move
move
240 out.
stabilization
Yeah.
to that,
Gotcha.
if it's more palatable.
And it helps the taxpayers of the town by $240,000.
Yes, it's rough and tough, it's 1%.
Yeah, it's their money anyway. All right, so moving on.
Van Mal's got a question.
Could you just repeat what that motion was?
We didn't make a motion, it was a consensus.
Oh, you have not?
There was a lack of consensus, actually.
Yeah.
Five people consents and two assist. How's that?
2 abstained,
Yeah,
Abstain.
5.
and 5 thought it was a good
In
idea.
favor.
Christina.
Paul and Christina?
Yeah.
It was not a motion, it was just a discussion.
Yeah, just a consensus. 5 consents. Okay, conduct FinCom vote on non-CIF funded items on the capital budget funding worksheet. Make any final adjustments, align warrant to funding. Now, this sounds a little strange since everybody on the capital budget committee, except for Liz, is also on the finance committee. but the finance committee has to hold their own votes. So to expedite things, does anybody on the finance committee have any issues with the funding recommendations being presented by the capital budget committee outside of the capital investment fund, which is the purview of the CBC? So that would mean they're funding from free cash, cemetery, what other funding sources do we have?
We have sale of used
Borrowing.
equipment, we have ARPA, which is not our jurisdiction.
Chapter
We
90.
have bond, we have chapter 90, we have CIF, we have CLS, we have fair share funding, we have free cash, we have sale of used equipment, water retained earnings.
Perfect.
And that's it.
Okay.
So does anybody on the finance committee have any issue with what the CBC has presented in their funding matrix? I do,
For,
which may come as a surprise.
I'm shocked.
And only one item I want to just speak on. I don't agree with putting $217,000 into the OPEB fund,
Now I'm doubly shocked.
Yeah,
okay? And I'm only going to say that, and I'm not going to go into any further discussion because I think last year I made myself pretty clear. But that's my opinion, and I will not agree to that, but nobody cares. So anyway, I've said my piece.
I do have, and I'm a little confused as to which way is this going, but did we put back in the headstones for fiscal year '25 at 8K out of the cemetery fund?
It is in this latest
Funding.
agreed upon funding plan under cemetery lot sales for $8,000 additional,
Okay.
as we discussed in the last meeting.
Is it in the warrant document?
I added it to the warrant
Okay,
as a edit that we shared with Bill.
okay.
Bill will have a warrant for us before our meeting next Tuesday, so that we can go over it, so that we can make our recommendations to the
Yeah, I
select board on Wednesday.
just want to let Bill know, because he wasn't at our meeting where I gave the feedback from Kathy.
He may have been on Zoom.
But anyway, go
At any
ahead.
rate, let me
Repeat it.
just repeat it. Kathy Harrington told me that the reason they hadn't spent the 8K for fiscal '24 was because the person that they like to do the headstones, and who's very skilled, wasn't available, but he is available now, so they're hoping to
Utilize it.
utilize the '24 monies, but they'd also like to have the '25 monies and get both done in
Also,
the coming year.
okay,
And I have another comment. I bet you're shocked. I
Go.
am too. I'm not going to argue over the 8K, okay? I'm not. But I would ask the historical commission two things, okay? Give us a long-range look on what your needs are. Don't come to us like we had schoolhouse painting that like doubled in cost at the last minute, and don't come with windows that doubled in cost at the last minute. And the second comment I'll make is many historical commissions work hard to get contributions from the town, and I would imagine Sterling would be like any of the other towns. I've seen neighboring Princeton, when they had some Civil War plaques that needed preserving and movement, they didn't come to the town within the capital committee to ask for the money to do that. They put up a fundraiser, and they got probably like 2x the amount of money they needed to do it as a result of their fundraiser. So it funded something else along with it. So that would be my second request, is rely less on the town capital budget year over year, which seems to be the trend, and work on contributions from the town.
any further comment
Enough said.
on from the finance committee members regarding the funding? Hearing none, I'll make a motion that the finance committee recommend the capital committee's funding presentation, or funding matrix. So I move the finance committee recommend acceptance of the capital budget committee's funding matrix as presented. Second.
For those items that are not CIF funded.
Exactly.
Seconded.
Any discussion? Good. Izzy, you want to vote?
Yella, aye.
King eye.
Handy aye.
Shepherd, aye.
Flash eye.
Austin, aye.
You're right.
Unanimous. Val, did you get that motion? I don't know what it was.
Yeah,
Joe, can you
Yeah,
repeat
the
it?
motion is,
FinCom recommends acceptance of CBC's funding matrix as presented for all but capital investment fund items, CIF items.
Correct.
for items not CIF funded.
For items not
Right.
CIF, correct.
Okay, excellent. So that knocks off another one. Moving on. Setting next meeting. Bill, are you still there?
Do we have to vote on the whole? All of
I don't think
them?
he's here anymore.
We all, yeah.
No, just CBC, okay? Is Bill gone?
I think so.
Yeah, he's not here.
Okay, all right, because I wanted to know when the warrant was going to be presented to us with real numbers on it.
He said he was hoping.
Well, he said the omnibus budget tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get in touch with him. Maybe he'll send them both at once. All right, so let's set the next meeting and agenda. I think we're darn close to wrapping this year up. So just, so next meeting, if everybody could go over the introductory letter, the Finance Committee and CBC are putting together, I think you got about 47 drafts so far?
Yes.
Okay. If maybe, yeah, so if you have any comments or thoughts, shoot them off.
Did you get my email on the capital ones?
Okay, shoot them off to,
I did, I haven't absorbed it yet.
Okay.
shoot them off to Joe, and we'll see where it goes from there. And next week, since this is getting sent off to the printers pretty darn soon, okay, we're gonna have to vote and accept our introductory letter to the warrant, okay? So that's gonna be a big part of our play. We're gonna finalize the recommendations for every warrant. We're gonna go through every article. We already did the biggies today, okay? And that's gonna pretty much wrap things up, except starting to plan for next year. Because once we have our meeting with the select board, we're pretty well done. Okay,
So you're suggesting next week is March 26th, Tuesday,
great.
a joint at 6:30, and then we've got joint select board
On
on the
Wednesday.
27th.
And that's when we're gonna make our presentation on what our thoughts on the warrant are.
Yep.
Then, like I say, we're pretty well wrapped up at that time, except talking about where we go from here.
And we have been told that the warrant is locked and loaded, end of business on the 28th, the next day after our meeting with the select board. So I put it, that we are very pressed for time right now. So we have to wrap up the reviews of anything we are concerned with reviewing in that very tight time frame.
Okay, so meeting next Tuesday, 6:30. Any agenda items outside of warrant discussion?
I think
Let Joe know, that's probably gonna be it.
that'll be probably the singular most important thing.
Yeah.
Is that-
So,
You meeting in here, or are we?
if it's available.
It is, it's gonna be here.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Joint
Second.
CBC and FinCom. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.